name is Brandon Nabaum. I don't know, some of you guys know me, some of you don't. I was one of the original speakers of the Boston Free Speech Rally. If any of you guys know me, you know I worked a very long time on Hanscom Air Force Base designing command and control systems for the Air Force. I was a delegate to the Republican National Convention in 2012.
Were you involved in the May thing as well?
I was there, but I was not a speaker. So I went, I attended, I saw what it was going to be like, and I, saw a normal rally, I guess, that there were a couple hundred people there, waved some flags, heard some speeches. None of them were too memorable, and that was about it. There was no violence. There were some counter-protesters, but I didn't see anything boil over to some physical altercations. There was a couple of heated moments of chanting back and forth, but nothing that I would even consider even noteworthy by even local media, never mind the firestorm that this has become in national media. But unfortunately, the horrible and tragic events of Charlottesville, Virginia occurred just a week before our event, right? And what this did was this unleashed a bit of a firestorm that, before I even knew what was happening, had me in a maelstrom of hatred and vitriol on a national stage. So what actually occurred, could you get it? Yes, no? On there? Oh. Okay. All right, then stand up here because you can get it. This is what I call the tweet heard around the world. You probably can't see this, but this is a tweet from CNN anchor Brian Fallon that says, Boston, beware. The organizer, Jason Kessler of the Charlottesville group, is already planning his next event in your city. Tweeted to Mayor Marty Walsh. This was an absolute statement by a CNN journalist that is knowably, provably false. This man, Jason Kessler, who no one from the Boston Free Speech Organization had ever even heard of, was not the same organizer. It was John Medler who was, and some others who were organizing our rally. Provably false, absolute statement tweeted to Marty Walsh. Mayor Marty Walsh, based upon, and when this was immediately refuted, he came back with some fuzzy logic saying, well, this guy was a member of this organization, and this other organization may be showing up to Boston, therefore his statement that these were the same people organizing it. Absolutely, provably false. Now, Mayor Marty Walsh, based upon nothing more, and I'm going to apologize for my lack of preparedness.
At next week's planned Boston Free Speech Rally on the Common.
Some group is supposed to be doing a march in Boston next weekend. No one's pulled permits. Our police intelligence unit is doing information gathering right now to see who they are. I mean, we don't need this type of hate, so my message is clear to this group. We don't want you in Boston. We don't want you in Boston Common. We don't want you spewing the hate that we saw yesterday and the loss of life.
Boston Rally organizers
We don't want you spewing that hate and that loss of life, calling us hate groups, calling us murderers, saying that we had not had a permit, and that their crack team of investigators was on this, figuring out who these people are. Well, apparently the crack team didn't decide to go to Twitter, and apparently they didn't decide to go and to the Parks and Rec department and actually look at the phone number of the organizer on the permit, which we had.
But he was told to say that, correct? He's the mouthpiece.
I don't know what he was told, but whatever it was, he was wrong, and we have a mayor who's making decisions on a level of proof that I would not accept my daughter in high school getting into an argument with. And yet, the mayor of this city sent an entire city, state, and nation into a tizzy with no factual evidence.
Wow. And you pay too much for the
Did you
permit.
expect this?
Huh, is that-
Were you expected to have a clean path right to a wonderful, beautiful rally? I would think with everything going on, you should have expected something.
Someone's on a
Right up
weekend.
until Charlottesville happened, I expected a average rally with a short speech with a couple of cheers
Because of
and
May.
some flag waving, and that's about it. Just like the one that was over Mother's Day weekend. Yeah. Literally, the only thing these two rallies had in common, the Charlottesville rally is they just had the horrible timing of being a week apart from each other. And had our rally been a week beforehand, no one would have cared. It would have gone completely unnoticed. So, what happened after that is this unleashed a torrent of internet hatred, which tracked all the organizers, all of the presenters down, including myself. My personal information was exposed. I started receiving a lot of threats, including some death threats, and a lot of those you don't take seriously online, but there were some valid ones. They contacted my employer, harassed my employer, and I was fired immediately on Sunday, the day after Charlottesville, with no explanation, no severance, and quite with a lot of malice from my employer.
Who's your employer?
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing. Immediately afterwards, I was saying that I didn't want to disclose my employer because I wasn't going to add to the hatred and the vitriol that was going back and forth. And the funny part was they ended up finding out that it was a company called Cantina Consulting in Boston, which is a software consulting company. And how everyone found out was these guys were going to them on Twitter, getting the reports that I had been fired, and then tweeting it back at me, saying, haha, I got you fired, and putting that all over the place as, holding up my scalp, saying, look what we did. So I was willing to not disclose my employer, but it was actually kind of their tactics that ended up disclosing who my former employer was. From there on, it gets a little bit crazy.
Communist society, if I've ever heard of one, or Nazi.
There was a man named Tim Gionnet, otherwise known as Bait Alaska, who was in Charlottesville, who was attacked with a chemical sprayed in his eyes, and he was blinded. At the time we heard these reports, they didn't know if he was going to be permanently blinded or what. Luckily now we know that after a long stay in the hospital, he is getting most of his vision back, but he will very likely have permanent blinding. So I don't take Die Nazi Scum as a death threat online. However, we blinded this guy, and we're going to do the same thing to the speakers at the free speech rally. Is something that you have to take a little bit more seriously. And when people disclose my home address and say we're going to come visit you,
No, that's,
not too seriously, but it gets a little bit more serious.
that is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything I've learned from this is just, I got called a Nazi, I got called all sorts of horrible, terrible things. People made stuff
All
up
for
about
having
me.
a different opinion than Democrats. That's all at the end of the day. That's what it is, and so that should be called out as well.
Yeah.
That you're clearly not. Yes, it should be a fact, it's the facts of what that you have a different opinion than Democrats, that's the only thing.
Yeah, and I've never said, I've maybe made some jokes, but I've never said a horrible word about anybody virtually in my entire life, and yet I found myself out of a job, being threatened, and all during this time, I am going, that Monday, I wrote up a press release saying, we had nothing to do with this. We said, you know, we're going to have a moment of silence. We're going to have any speaker, anybody who even attended Charlottesville was going to be specifically banned, and all the speakers were going to have to very specifically denounce violence. And all we put out this press release. Nobody cared. Everything was just Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. I was doing press with everybody. They were just trying to catch me in some kind of a statement where they could use my words against me. And it was really at the point where a lot of our protection, so the organizers were calling up the police on that Monday, and they were giving the organizers the runaround. They were literally transferring them to different departments, not answering their questions. Then they called back up and said they were counter-protesters, and they got right through. So, I mean, this was a clear signal that, and the 3%ers were given a stand-down order, so they were told not, and they were our primary protection the first time. So we had no protection. The police were giving us a runaround. It looked like the biggest setup in the world.
That's what I saw from the live stream, that basically they actually, if you watch the live stream from people who were like, it actually was probably Antifa people who were like doing the live stream, it's like basically the police made sure that all of the people there for the free speech rally were escorted through and had to like walk through all of the Antifa people and get attacked, and they had weapons, and they took all your weapons away. And Antifa footage actually showed that, which was amazing.
Yeah, and so
and then you guys got attacked, and like the woman with the American flag and had a flag got dragged for quite a while.
Okay, because let's fast forward to that craziness. There's a whole set in between, but I can't,
okay.
like, I have a documentarian who recorded this so I could get some proof against my slander, and he was actually a really progressive liberal guy, but I had no other choice. I needed to go on record, and he ended up getting mistakenly added to the list of speakers at the free speech rally, and he ended up getting called both a Nazi from the left and getting actual Nazi death threats from the right. So he was kind of like literally in my place 24 hours after he was talking to me. He was in the same exact place. As far as let's fast forward to the free speech rally itself. One of what they won't tell you is the original lineup included Dr. Shiva Ayadurai, an Indian American running for U.S. Senate, as well as an Occupy Wall Street activist, right? And we actually picked up someone who was actually a progressive socialist, Bernie Sanders supporting free speech lawyer.
I was hoping he would come. I had him on Facebook. He said he wanted to come.
Yeah. Funny story. He's actually a friend of mine. We've been talking a lot. I've got a short little video from him. But the amazing thing is that he says that if this goes unchallenged, this will represent the greatest erosion to our free speech rights in the last quarter century. So what they did very quickly was not only did they deny half of the speakers, they denied all of the participants, they denied all media. They tried to, the only reason we have a recording of it is someone had to sneak their cell phone in. Otherwise there would have been nothing that we would have as a record against this bias and this slander, right? So what they've essentially said is they understand that it's unconstitutional to deny the permit, right? But they've said we don't have to illegalize the speaker. We can illegalize the listener, right? So what does this mean? This means that, yes, so this precedence, if this goes unchallenged, they say, fine, Milo, you want to speak at a school? Fine, you can have a permit to speak, but we're going to bar the auditorium and not allow anyone in or out. You have the right to have a podcast. You can speak into the microphone, but we're going to shut down the website. We're not going to let you distribute it. This is a horrible precedence.
Citing security
and-
concerns, is that the justification?
What?
What was the justification? Security?
Security, but there's actually something called a heckler's veto, right? Very clear precedence in First Amendment law. It says if you have people who want to speak and you have people who are using violence or the threats of violence to shut down that speech, you don't shut down the speech, you go arrest the people who are committing violence.
Especially at state-sponsored schools such as Berkeley.
Yeah.
Where the government pays for that.
Yeah, so this was clearly a heckler's veto. Shutting down the event early was a heckler's veto. Everything they did to try to deny the freedom of speech of the people involved was a heckler's, was unconstitutional and a blatant violation. And here's kind of the kicker. My free speech lawyer friend and I are literally the only two people fighting this right now. He went to the ACLU, and the ACLU declined the case. They said they were the ones in Charlottesville who got the permit back, so they're getting a lot of heat over that, and they don't want to take on something else. I've reached out to some other groups. There's the ACLJ, there's Institute for Justice. They didn't seem too keen on it, but Judicial Watch, I've got a call into them as well. So I'm hoping here, but I mean, literally right now, it's me and a progressive socialist Bernie Sanders supporter who are agreeing to fight this thing. And I don't know if I do have any more time, but I want to leave you with a video that I see this as like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. It's him, it's my friend Ronaldo in the back of a police transport with his Bernie Sanders supporter shirt on, and he was the only one who got any press about fearing for his life because he was a progressive, and the title of the Boston Herald thing said, "Progressive feared for his life." So he's the only one who's allowed to have this message, but this is his message from the back of the police transport as he was being evacuated.
I'm Ronaldo Delgado, and I'm a Bernie Sanders progressive. I ran the stage like I'm about the most left-wing guy there is, but I believe in your right to speak. The anti-fa theory is that basically they should stop Nazism before it gets going, and the reason why they're thinking is wrong is, first of all, that didn't work in Europe. And there were lots of communists fighting the fascists, and they lost the war of ideas, and Hitler won the election. We need to win the war of ideas. And what they're doing is they're attacking people, they're being violent. They cost $100,000 a damage out of Berkeley. You had Milo who couldn't speak. The Black Lives Movement even literally stopped Bernie Sanders from speaking about people. And so, it's very important that we have the right to speak. And what's ironic is in a case called Gitlow in 1925, Brandeis and Holmes were in dissent. They basically said, unless you're starting a riot, because there's immediate danger, you should speak. The majority said no. They actually stopped the anarchists, the socialists, people on their side. Then, and I don't want to speak long on that patty wagon, but Martin Luther King's last speech, the Mountaintop speech, he was talking about an injunction that went against them. They were stopped from speaking because they said it was causing riots, it was causing violence, that it cost too much money. The very same things are happening here. That's why, free speech is extremely important for democratic discourse. You need robust speech. It's got to happen. Just because you think somebody's going to put a shirt and a war on it doesn't mean you have a right to punch them. Doesn't mean they should shut down a rally. They had a Facebook page, the event page. 11,000 people voted, like quote unquote, said they're going to shut down the rally. They said they want to shut down the rally. That Facebook page actually said it's not going to be accountable. People signed it. I have no problem with counter speech, but when you shut people down, when you don't allow them to speak, I think it in a rally.
So this is...
Is that up on YouTube?
Okay, that is up on YouTube. You can go to my channel. My name is Brandon Navom. Go to my channel. You can see it. You can also see it from, I have a GoFundMe up, GoFundMe/NAVOM. And we're also getting a Facebook group, which Patrick has, where we are trying to get all of the people who actually attended, and we actually need we need witness statements from people who were very specifically denied entry. We had people who said they asked for safe passage through the crowd, they were denied. So we need those affidavits from those specific people. And we need a big group like Judicial Watch or ACLJ to come in and backstop this legal action. So, I mean, this is up to you, Boston. I did everything I possibly could within my power to try to fight for liberty, to fight for freedom of speech. Now it's your turn. I hope you guys will join me in this fight.
Excuse me, so you didn't have anybody arranged ahead of time to videotape the event, except a socialist?
This was happened in after the event as they were being evacuated. There were people who were, but they were all banned. All the media, anybody who even has a cell phone. Shiva, they wouldn't even let Shiva bring in his laptop because they thought he could record on that. The only
Why didn't they
reason...
want it recorded? You have a right to record that.
Yes, this is the point.
Public event.
This is the point, is they didn't want it recorded because they didn't want public support to shift away from their narrative that these were all
Who's they?
Nazis.
Who's they?
Okay.
Mayor Boston.
I have to move
Well,
on. I
see,
only
that-
have